Okay.
All right.
Hey, everybody. I'm Elysia Buss, host of Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection. And today I am interviewing an old friend of mine, Ray Graybeer.
Hi.
And he is a health and wellness coach over here in Gig Harbor, Washington. And one of the things that I love about Ray is how he takes his computer and he travels to like these beautiful little spots. I see these postings that he does, allowing himself, I feel like, to have better self-care by getting out into nature, even though he's connecting through like technology, which we clearly had some technological issues today. See, you probably just should have been outside. You just jinxed the whole thing by being inside, right? Like,
Right. Exactly. Well, it's a little cold out today, so
it
it's
is a little cold out.
and when you're outside, you don't have any control over the environment.
What?
Right. It's so crazy.
I thought you were able to do magic. I'm so confused right now.
Nope. That's one thing I haven't figured out yet.
Maybe later. So Ray,
lots of other things.
Right? Ray has some pretty interesting stories about the different. His journey has been rather extensive as he's worked through nutrition and different health and models to heal his own personal body. So Ray, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Should be fun.
Yeah. So it's just in the beginning.
Yeah. How far back do you want me to go? So basic.
Like, what was like the key moment in your life that everything kind of began in your journey with your health?
So I can probably put that back to a car accident in my early 20s, and I lost all memories of my childhood.
Oh, wow.
So traumatic brain injury, all that, and I didn't address it because I was a kid and there was nothing wrong, right? So that led to other infections, and eventually 20 years later, I would get diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. And the doctors figured out that there had been a kidney stone lodged in my bladder for about 15 years. And that was causing tons of pain and pelvic floor dysfunction. And the brain injury ended up, I actually found out from a doctor in Spain. It took me 20 years to get, and I had been a founder in Spain, that the pons nuclei, when there's damage there, it has this big effect on muscle spasms internally and addressing those. And that's where the stone came from. But this was like a 20-year journey, right?
Wow.
And every doctor told me that it was all in my head because I always dealt with kidney stones and they never went any further. Even when the doctor found it, he wasn't looking for it. And twice he missed it because he didn't go down into the bladder.
Oh, wow.
So it's when you talk about being told there's nothing wrong with you from everyone, including doctors and whatever, it's a pretty frustrating experience. So that's why I do what I do. I was there for a lot of years, and whether doctors believe there's something wrong with you or not, they're still helpful, they're doing their job, but it's up to us to kind of take that next step and be in charge of our own health journey.
Yeah, and advocate for our health and, like, keep
going
until we get the answers that we need.
Yep. And you mentioned like modalities that I've followed and different systems and whatnot. And probably the number one thing I can say about that is systems are great, but there's not a single one that's going to work for you on all accounts like it works for somebody else.
Yeah, because everybody is different.
Right. I did the vegan diet for a year. Strictly. And I gained a bunch of weight, but I decreased my pain. I did paleo for 4 years, mostly strict, and lost weight, but I was in a bunch of pain. So take the combination of those two things and figure out what worked right on paleo, what worked right on vegan, and blend them. And now all of a sudden I have a diet that doesn't bring me pain.
Yeah, right? And you do fasting a lot, right?
Yeah, fasting is huge. I got to a point, I think it was 2 years ago, 2 years ago, 2018, where everything I ate caused me pain. It didn't matter what I was drinking or eating or anything. It just hurt. And the only thing I hadn't tried yet was to stop eating. As you know, I've been a trainer for 12 years, and not eating is anti everything we've been taught.
Yeah.
But I had already done everything that I had been taught and followed those rules. And while there were certain things that were effective, nothing encompassed what I was going through completely until I found fasting. And it took about 3 months of intermittent fasting before I had my first day without pain. And mind you, I forgot all memories of my childhood. So I never actually remembered a day without pain, because this stuff all started in that same time, right?
Yeah, that's
so now you got to realize that there's no comparison, right? There's no remembering what it was like to live without pain until all of a sudden you have this realization.
Yeah.
And I find that happens a lot with chronic illness, is that we're in pain for so long, we don't actually remember what it's like to have less pain. It just keeps getting more.
Yeah.
So that's, clean intersection, that's where the Thrive theory came from. So I have this belief and this theory that whether you're dealing with a chronic illness or not, or whatever, we're all surviving and thriving at the same time. It's just a matter of what you're putting your focus and energy into. So you can be a survivor and be great, but what sounds better, right? I'm surviving, or I'm thriving.
Yeah.
Simply by changing that one word, it's got a more positive connotation through everything, from the subconscious to the conscious, to how you think about yourself. You can be a survivor, or you can be a thriver, or you can be both, or you can make a choice to thrive when you're surviving. And then I created that model around how to get to that.
Love it.
And how to stay and be sustainable in that.
Yeah.
So, but it's just from my experience and years and actually being a trainer and a coach with an invisible illness that everybody thought was in my head.
Yeah.
So I've looked at the fitness industry for over a decade from someone with the eyes of chronic illness, which is a little bit different than not having those barriers and, I don't want to say problems, but challenges. So I don't know, it's just a big balance of finding the modalities that work and not focusing on what doesn't work, taking what's working and what's working and what's working and kind of putting those together, and then somehow making it sustainable.
Yeah.
For me, it's easy to not eat for 24 hours. But when I started this, I couldn't go more than an hour without food, without getting sweaty, without having those hangry fits, right?
Yeah.
Yet everything I was eating hurt.
Yeah.
So the thing that made me feel better also gave me pain. And the only thing that seemed to rectify that was to just not eat at all. But in the beginning, I just couldn't get over the hunger. So, for me, fasting, I had to start with bone broth, and I just basically drank bone broth until I could go more with foods. I see people jump into intermittent fasting for a fix, and they fast for 18 hours and life is miserable. And I've been there and I've done that. So when I said don't eat for 24 hours and it's easy, it wasn't easy when I started. It took 2 years to get to this point. But in those 2 years, I don't have any pain anymore. It was worth the investment. It was worth the time and the energy. But it's the one modality or system, as it were, that of less, that is so much more.
No, that's great. And what's the longest period of time you've gone without eating?
I think it was 56 hours was my max. And that was when I was dealing with a kidney stone.
Oh, wow.
I was just like, forget it. I'm not eating. It hurts. Everything. And
everything hurts.
That was the last kidney stone that I had. And that was a year ago.
Well, that's great.
2 years ago. That was 2 years ago when I was, so obviously when you start doing something, not you, me, I have to go overboard. So when I finally figured out how to fast and got my first 24-hour fast, then it was 48, then it was 72, then it was whatever. And then through that, you know, you produce these little challenges for yourself or stay busy, or because it's working so well and you feel so good.
Yeah.
But the body still has to clean out what's already in there. And that's what was happening. It's getting that, you know, so
yeah,
it's been a fun experience and a fun journey, but it's definitely not over. Like there's a lot of different things to address, even in the sustainability of it.
yeah.
And that's where the system that I developed comes from. It just literally keeps you in check every day or every week to make sure you're still on your goals and on the path that you designed however long ago when you wanted to start this.
Great. Can you talk a little bit more about the model that you created and like
So
how you work with your clients, since everybody's different?
So yeah, Thrive Theory, the acronym Thrive stands for time, heart, rest, invest, vision, and expression. The thing that I found about chronic illness is a lot of things, but the number one thing is creating enough space to heal. Like when we're in this cycle of illness, when I'm in this cycle of illness, there's so much that I'm not getting done when I feel terrible, that the moment I feel better, I need to get all that stuff done. But there's no stopping. There's just sick and there's getting better until I get sick again, and then getting better until I get sick again. But where in there is there space to rest and heal
and just be
without stress, right?
Yeah.
So I feel creating space is the number one thing that we have to do in order to heal. There's lots of other ways to do it. I just find it happens faster when you have more space and you live within the boredom. Right? We get bored. We're like, I need to be able to do something. Okay, I have 20 minutes. What can I get done? I don't want to be bored, or I'm sitting here bored, or it's that the magic is in the boredom. So thrive by creating more time in your day to do more of what you love, giving yourself permission to rest, having a vision for the future, investing yourself, and expressing all of this to your other family, and more importantly to yourself, creates enough space to do the things that you want to do.
No, that's
But
great.
it also keeps, thank you. And it
Yeah,
also keeps us level.
Yeah,
Like,
creating those internal and external boundaries.
mm-hmm. And then sticking to them and checking in on them on different levels.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to hit everything every day, but you'll know where you're at within that. And that's how I feel people can thrive in the midst of an illness, any illness. It's looking at what you're doing right instead of what's going wrong, which is really hard
Sometimes
when everything hurts. I mean, it used to take me 3 hours in the morning to gauge my day, get an idea, cancel appointments, make sure I could do this depending on what was going on. It was all I could do to get to the gym and train and, you know, do a few massages and then live my life. And the rest was just in bed. And the moment I had time that's actually why I designed my business in the first place, was because I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed a lot of times. So I needed to design an online business to help people like me, because there were a lot of them in what I was going through, but also to serve me better. But in creating that, I created enough space to be able to heal myself with the things that I was coaching other people on. Like I follow my system every day. To me, it's the only way that I can stay healthy.
Yeah.
Like if I fall off and do things the way I used to do them, or the way you could say want to do them, within a month, I'm in a really bad place.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I've tried, believe me. I mean, even being 2 years out of this, 3 years out of this, within a month, I can put myself right back into a lot of pain. And it's just by eating certain things and exercising too much or the wrong way. And by wrong way, I mean like doing HIIT programs. If I do anything high intensity or run and do it for a long time, I just end up in a whole bunch of pain. So I do other things and stay in a different way. So it's, you know, managing expectations is a huge part of that. And that's a huge part of creating space.
Yeah. And then you're also a body worker. Like Ray and I met because we're both massage therapists initially
Mhm.
years
Yep.
ago. I don't even remember. I think was it 2017?
I don't know. It was, yeah, it was.
Somewhere in there. But yeah, but that's been interesting in regards to COVID, right? Because you have a whole different life experience in regards to COVID because you started isolation early, right? With your
Yeah.
journey.
So I, I went, I made a decision to really pour into my company and design these systems as it was coming to me, and to kind of experiment with isolation in that I just wanted to be able to focus. So I set myself up in the middle of nowhere, and worked 18 hours a day. It was a beautiful space, but I
And
was
when
just
was
in my
that again?
computer
When did you
18
start
hours.
that
So what?
process? When did you start that process? When you first started to isolate? Just to give people
That
like a
was
timeline.
like October 19,
Okay.
August, September 2019. My intent wasn't to isolate. My intent was to rent an office space and grow my business and do massage and body work out of there. But as everyone vacated the building, I had a 10,000 square foot facility and there wasn't anyone in it.
Sounds
Like all of the
fantastic.
other businesses had left. So, you know, I went from having all these conversations with people just on a superficial level to then there was nobody coming in and out of this building, and I'm just doing my work. And after 6 months of that, I'm like, I'm going out of my mind. I've got to go out and talk to people about this and to interact and whatever. And at like that exact time, COVID hit. So we're in, it's in February, and now they're talking about lockdown, and I'm like, I'm just ready to start going.
You're like, no,
Like
I want
I've
to
already
see
been
people.
here. Yeah, I've
It
already
is
been
locked down. Please
here.
don't make me do it again.
Yeah. So it was, I know the effects that it has on me,
Right.
and my mental health. So that's why now we're six months into COVID and more isolation and whatnot. And I finally decided to go back and start doing body work again. Just, I decided a couple months ago that I had to find the right place and the right
Right.
people and the right environment, because I don't want to just do it anywhere. And like you said, my business is completely mobile. So I can go do a couple of massages and go down to the beach and work. And, I don't, I spend as little amount of time at home as I can.
Which is
Just,
incredibly healthy. Something I need to work on myself.
yeah. The outdoors is great. And with a hot spot, you can pretty much go anywhere. It's just making it comfortable for yourself and being able to focus, which is not my best thing. I don't focus very well. But that's the next part of my journey is you don't know what's wrong, and you don't remember what you've forgotten until it's like put out in front of you. Like when you lose your memory, you don't know what you've forgotten.
Yeah.
But even more, you don't know what you're remembering, and if that's truth, or if it's a dream, or if it's something someone said and you remembered that and you held on to that. So even when I remember stuff, I don't know how much truth there is to it.
It's really interesting.
You know what I mean? So so on to the next part of that: interstitial cystitis, pelvic floor dysfunction, IBS, different muscle spasm diagnoses, only to find out that my root cause is from my brain injury. Right? So all these things stemmed from that, and that's never going away.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so important to realize in these journeys that what happens if you find your root cause and it's always going to be there. Which is why in my company, in my process, in my systems, I like to look for linchpins. Look for the little things that add to the big thing. And I would never have known that had I not found intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting for me was a linchpin, is a linchpin. And that
Yeah.
brought all of these different things that I had been working on for the last 10 years in the fitness industry, right? Getting all these certifications, getting all of these nutritional education and whatnot. And it all applied to a certain degree, but none of it made sense. None of it actually worked for me on the level that I expected it to from following things as specific until intermittent fasting.
Interesting.
And now it's learning all of that. Now that root cause is a brain injury, right?
Yeah.
So now I get to go back 20 years and figure out how that affected all the things coming up to this, and
Yeah.
how to go forward with that in a comfortable manner with lower expectations. Like originally when I started this, I wanted to help everybody that I could across the world, you know, but after 3 years, it's been niched down to helping more specific people that I can help better. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that can benefit from what I do, but there's other folks that are ready for it. And that's the difference between 3 years and now. It's like I only have a certain amount of energy, and I can help a certain type of person better than I can the masses.
Makes complete sense to me. It's just
Right?
working with people with a growth mindset versus like just, it's like somebody going to school versus somebody getting a life coach. Like one feels like as a requirement, and one feels like, hey, like I'm ready to like approach things in my life and grow and shift and transform. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's just shifting from that survive mindset, which is noble. Like surviving is, but it's hard.
Yeah.
Shifting to that thrive mindset of finding the good things in the hard is how I've learned to sustain wellness. Like I can't drink anymore. I can't run anymore. I can. Let me rephrase that. I can. It just doesn't make me happy.
Yeah. It's just
Like,
physically
yeah,
and mentally not a fun experience.
right. And, you know, similarly, when I started my company, it was fitness with chronic illness, which is noble, right? Until you see fitness with chronic illness in your email 100 times a day. Like it's just, and then the emails that I'm sending out to people are labeled fitness with chronic illness, literally stating you're sick and you're all sick and this is what we're doing, right? So that was one of the big changes that I had to make in my business was, and in myself, as you get better, you learn to realize that focusing on the illness will bring illness. Focusing on the wellness will bring wellness. Survive, thrive, mindset shifts, law of attraction, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
But that's been my journey and my shift in myself, which brings it into my business.
Yeah. And having a difference between chronic illness versus chronic pain.
They're still the same. Like pain is illness, right? When you break it down, illness, that's just really what it is. There's certain messages in that pain that are, I'm not going to say good, but that we can find to further understand where that's coming from and how to make that less. Does that make sense?
That's interesting because like I think of the chronic pain that I have in my low back from my 2 surgeries. And I don't think of that as illness. I just think of that as like dysfunctional patterning of fascia and not like strengthening different areas of the body. I guess that's just the way I look at things, like illness coming more from like like a pathology or some sort of sickness or like dysfunction in a slightly different way versus like something mechanical that happened.
Right.
In
But
the
you
body
use
that's causing pain.
the word dysfunction.
Yeah. But dysfunction and illness to
To
me
me
are
that's
two,
right.
they're different things. It's like the origination of them. Like there can be an overlap of dysfunction caused either from illness or from a mechanical injury. but they're not necessarily always in the same camp.
I can appreciate that.
I mean, like, yeah.
No, everybody has their own view of everything. Like one of the things that I found in developing Thrive Theory over the last year, so it took me, a long time to create it, and then I wanted to implement it. I had a specific system, right? Time, heart, rest, invest, vision, expression.
Yeah.
And it's built on my 4 pillars of mindset, meals, move, and massage.
Yeah. Can you say that a little bit slower for people that are listening?
So I have 4 pillars of mindset, meals, move, and massage. That's your exercise, your nutrition, your, mindset, obviously. And then the massage part is, body work, self-care, self-massage techniques, things you can learn to bring yourself to a different level when you don't have the ability to see a practitioner, or in between things, or as life just gets out of hand, right? Not everybody can afford to go to the massage therapist once a week.
Yeah. Expensive. Even with insurance.
Yeah. So, in my programs, I teach you how to do self-massage. It's not as effective as a massage therapist, but it'll get you there, and you learn body awareness a whole lot better.
Yeah.
So we take those pillars and apply that. Yeah. We take those pillars. That's what Thrive Theory is built on. As long as we can hit those on a regular level and identify that, you really know what you're doing well and what's going right.
Yeah.
And how much energy you're putting into your wellness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We started this on a different subject, like a different heading, and I completely got off base there. So
no, it's fine. It's just like the great thing about these interviews is it's just like a relaxed conversation, and it just kind of goes where it goes. And it's completely acceptable for people to have differing viewpoints on something based on their own life experience. And and I love that, because we can still be respectful and have differing opinions. I think it's a really great thing to get the role model for people right now, because there are so many people that have differing opinions about what's going on, and that's okay. Like, live your life, like, do you, it's like, as you tell me.
Well, so okay, now I remember where I was going with that. So I designed Thrive Theory as a specific system, but what I've learned in running it through different people now is that everybody looks at it differently, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
So Thrive Theory went from this system to a model. And when it's a model, you can, and that's why I call it theory, because what you start with is not going to be what you finish with. And when it's a model or a system or something concrete, it allows a lot less adaptation and change. When it's a theory, you start with something and you end up with something different, but the vision is still the same in reaching a certain goal. How you reach that becomes sometimes completely different from how you were starting to reach it.
Right, which brings me back to one of my other questions, which was like, how do you basically adapt your theory to each individual client? Like, how do you assess them and work in collaboration to meet those different pillars?
I talk to people, just like you're doing.
Easy. I'm just like, I listen to you.
Yeah, that's really what it is. I feel that everyone has the answers to these questions inside them.
I agree.
I can give you answers, but if it's not something you want to follow, or it's fun for you, or it's not going to happen long term.
Yeah.
So in regular communication, figuring this out, you're able to come up with things that you love to do, things that really, really work. I have clients that they want to drink a sugar soda every day. Like, that's just something that brings them joy. So we work with that, and we plug that in, and they decide what they're going to give up so they can have that soda.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you can just kind of plug in different data points from who you are. And we actually track that in the app. So I have an app, and you'll track the different pillars and we'll get a graph, and we'll see what you really like to do, what you don't like to do, what's working, what's not working. And then we take that information and we build a specific program just for you based on what you like and don't like.
Nice.
Like, yeah. And that's that's where the shift comes in. So you work on the pillars and you get good at those, and then you start plugging that into Thrive Theory and find literally what can work for you and sustain you as long as you want it to, based on your answers and what you want.
Right on. How long do you feel like people usually work with you on this program to like
It
attain their goals?
changes. It changes. So Thrive Theory as a system or a model or a theory or whatever, I've only had running since January, but I've been coaching this way for a decade. It's just all coming down into something that you can kind of put on paper and people can think about and that. So I forgot the original question. Ask me that again. That's the whole brain injury thing. It's fun.
It's totally fine. So on average, how long would you say it takes a person to run through this program and meet their goals? Understanding that every person's journey is different.
I start with 12 weeks.
Okay.
So we figure out where you're at and what you're willing to do and how this works for you in 12 weeks. From those 12 weeks, there's other 12-week programs that you can choose to focus on. They're all customized to you body and mind. Like, it's a whole different mindset to be and stay in a healthy place than it is to try to constantly get out of this illness, right? So it's this entire mindset shift. But I have clients that I've worked with for 8 years, just because that's part of their wellness now.
Yeah.
Some people come through for 12 weeks, they learn what they want to learn and they go apply that to their life. Some people work for 12 weeks, go apply it, come back 12 weeks later or come back 2 weeks later or whatever, because they want to know more and they want the accountability. I was
just going to say, you become kind of an accountability coach.
Yeah, that's a big part of this. But the other really cool thing is seeing the results and the graphs of everything that you're doing, like little check-ins that just say it's just a single click, but over 2 months you start to see what's happy, what's not, what's working.
Yeah.
And you can just start applying these different graphs, if that's how you learn, to see where you're headed and where you've come from and where you're going.
That makes sense, especially for people that are visual learners,
Yes.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
The whole multiple intelligence theory thing.
My programs are 100% based on customization. Like, there's no two people that heal the same or with the same, or have people have the same goals, but how they get there is going to be differently. Some people want to drink soda. Some people want to be vegan. Some people want to follow keto. Some people want a combination of that. And some people find that when they start keto, it's not working for them and we want to shift. But it's all within the process. Like, everybody's different in this process, but if we have something to follow, like a roadmap, it's a lot easier to navigate. And that's pretty much what I provide, is that roadmap.
That makes sense to me. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanisms of fasting and why it works, like how it helps the body? Because I think a lot of people probably have some misconceptions about fasting and how it works.
So for me, I went and studied on autophagy pretty deeply. Like, there's a free course from, I think, not Harvard, but a school out in Japan that's similar to Harvard. It's a tech type school, and they built a class around the scientists that discovered autophagy.
And for people that don't know what that word means,
that is basically when your body eats itself. So autophagy is this, just a general layman terms, we all have these cells in our body that are dying or dead or half not working, right? I mean, that's just part of cellular regeneration.
Sure.
What autophagy does is it takes those cells, it takes the good parts, and it makes other cells, and then it discards and eats the bad parts, the parts that are sick.
Okay.
Your body has this amazing ability to regenerate itself. What I've learned, and in the science, is we don't give our bodies enough space for that to work. You know, in prehistoric times, when we judge our paleo stuff, we weren't eating 3 meals a day. We weren't eating 8 meals a day. We were eating once a day at best. Sometimes we skipped for 3 days, right? I mean, if you look at the farming schedule, sometimes there's short crops, and at the end of winter, you're fasting until more food comes available. Like, you're just forced into that, but that kept us healthy.
Yeah.
When your body has the ability to regenerate itself through autophagy, you're literally eating a way to think about this is, you have a bunch of dead cells. Your body's going to take the good from that and put it into skin cells. I'm just using it for instance, right? So now you're taking stuff that's not working and putting it somewhere else where it can work better.
Yeah.
I see that little grin on your face, like, wait, what?
No, I mean, I'm just processing information. I just love like learning new things and like getting to present it to people. So that's just my happy grin of just like, I'm just visualizing the whole process. Yeah. And then the body's remarkable. I mean, just in general. Yeah. Go on.
But its ability to regenerate itself is even more remarkable, that I've found. Like, to be able to literally just stop eating and your body go in and kill what's not working and put it where it can work, and just that reorganization is incredibly special. But
yeah,
I would never have known what was going on or how it was going on until I did intermittent fasting. Like, I didn't look into intermittent fasting. I just stopped eating because it hurt.
Yeah.
And then I figured out why I felt better. And it just happened to be all these things. But like autophagy, if you haven't specifically worked towards that or taken steps to get into the state of autophagy, in the beginning, it takes sometimes 40, 45, 50 hours of not eating before your body gets into that state.
Oh, wow.
Now that I eat OMAD and I fast regularly, I feel it takes a shorter amount of time. So my body can get into that state a couple hours a day. Like, if I'm not eating for 24 hours, 1 meal a day.
Gotcha. I was like, what?
So, yes, sorry. So
sorry,
I eat all of
everything for a second. My bad. Let me go back and say.
I eat all of my calories in 1 meal.
Gotcha.
So my body can digest everything that it needs to digest, and then I can really plan a great meal.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures of your meals, dude. They're pretty epic.
Yeah.
Very colorful.
So thank you. And
you're welcome.
The really cool thing about OMAD when you're living with a chronic condition is, a lot of times little simple foods that you don't think about can have this detrimental effect on your health. For me, one of those things is watermelon, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Yeah. One of them for me, like avocado, will make me not feel as well as if I'm not eating it. But I keep, like, when I'm doing these testings, I do, veggies, a certain bean, like only refried beans or pinto beans, because any other beans hurt. But I'm able to test that because I eat OMAD. So I can eat the same exact meal 5 days out of the week. And on the 5th day, I add watermelon to it. And the next day, I don't feel that well. I don't feel as well as I did those other days. So now I know that since I've got my base meal dialed in and I eat that regularly, I can add individual ingredients and see what's affecting me. Like things like garlic powder, things like certain teas, but when you're only adding one thing in at a time, you really get to learn about how you feel. So take the watermelon thing, for instance. Like, it doesn't always hurt me, and sometimes there's variations of it. But what you learn is that it's something called a histamine liberator. Are you familiar with those?
No, go ahead. Well, I mean, because it's not just for me, it's for like everybody watching, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if that's something that most people probably wouldn't know what that is, it's like, let's just describe it.
So to give it just a general term, it's your body builds up histamines, and that's what gives us a stuffy nose and allergies and those sorts of things. So when there's lots of pollen in the air and you have a problem with pollen, typically eating watermelon serves to release more histamine that the pollen's already got you on overload with.
Yeah.
So in certain times of the year, watermelon can be fine.
That makes
But other
sense.
times, not so much. But you don't learn that unless you're able to sort of isolate that specific ingredient.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's tons of these little things like that for me, like spinach, the same way. It just brings me a little bit of GI stress, and I don't know why. And honestly, I don't care. I'm just not going to eat it. There's other
Seems
ways to do
reasonable to
it,
me.
you know. But like that's kind of the journey. It's getting selfish about not being in pain, because every one of those little things that I eat cause me a little bit of pain, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
You know.
What's the experience worth it to you? Because like, yeah, I love ice cream. It does not do well for my brain. You know, the sugar just like creates inflammation in my body. My emotional regulation isn't as good. Like I'm more reactive to things when I eat sugar. And I know that about myself. But sometimes I'm just like, man, I just really want freaking like ice cream right now. It's like, it's a hot day. It's been kind of a stressful day, like, or whatever. And I'm just like, I want to have ice cream. But when I do that, I know that to have the most functional engagements with other people and the best experience for myself, that I then have to front load how like I structure the rest of my day and like what I'm going to eat and what other things that I'm going to do for self-care, and which people I'm willing to engage with and which people I'm not willing to engage with, because I know that like maybe like on a good day, the slight antagonism from XYZ people is like something I'm just like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And I just let it roll off my back. And other days, if I've had a lot of sugar and I'm under stress in general, then I'm just like, nope, just not going to call that person.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Like, I don't want to feed into that experience and cause drama or like some other, repercussion that's not pleasant for them or for me. And that's about like really being humble and like honoring yourself and holding yourself accountable. Be like, yes, I want this, but that means that we're not going to do that if we want to stay in a functional space that's like optimum, ideal engagement with the world and myself.
Exactly. Yeah, and it just becomes not worth it. Like I want to operate at a higher level. So the ice cream, the beer, the watermelon, the different, it's just not worth it. So, you know, I have a specific base meal, and that's what I teach my clients is find that base meal you can always fall back on.
Yeah.
But it can also serve to just keep you on this stable level.
Yeah.
And, you know, food then becomes a source of energy rather than flavor and that. But
it's fuel.
When you're fuel. But when you're eating that way, the other stuff becomes so much better when you have it.
It's true.
You know, abstinence is the purveyor of perspective. Like if you're going to cut it out, you're going to see where it is and where it's important. But don't cut things out that don't make you, if it doesn't make you happy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you got to have ice cream, but give yourself, create enough space the next day to chill out, go for a hike, do whatever, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and I mean, like, and if you're going to do that, eat good ice cream. Don't eat shitty ice cream. Like really commit to the experience, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Or if shitty ice cream is your thing, eat a bunch of it, you know, whatever.
No, I mean, taste wise, like, don't be like, I want ice cream and you're going to, make the extra trip to go to the store to get the really good ice cream. Don't,
exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. 100%. 100%.
I'm just like, it's not bad, but if I'm going to eat ice cream, like I need Haagen-Dazs or I need like some Ben and Jerry's, like half baked, man, like go all the way.
Yep. Yeah. My thing is burgers. If I'm going to, you know, there's a certain burger joint that I like. And that's,
oh my God, I love cheeseburgers.
Yeah, not cheeseburgers, just burgers. I love cheeseburgers, but cheeseburgers and me don't.
They don't love each other.
It's mine. Yeah, dairy is one of those things that I just don't engage in. It's just not worth it.
No.
So, but for other people, it's just fine.
Yeah, I can't eat cheap cheeseburgers, but if I make one at home or like there's certain places in the United States when I go to and I'm like, I'm going there and I'm treating myself to this thing that's delicious but terrible for me, and it's going to be 100% worth it.
Yep. And I'm going to leave myself a whole day to recover.
A whole day to recover. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's this place in Asheville, North Carolina, and they have incredible, it's like farm to table stuff, but they deep fry chicken breasts and they put it on the most amazing biscuits. Like they're in Grants Pass, Oregon. They have the best biscuits in all of the United States that I've run across. And, but it's biscuits and cheddar cheese and white sausage, like white, like gravy. Oh my God. And you get cheesy grits and it's just, oh, my mouth is just watering thing. It's like heart attack food, but it's, oh
See,
my
that just sounds like 3 days of pain. It doesn't matter
it's,
what kind of flavor I get out of that. Nope. I would not even consider.
yeah. Yeah.
That's just where I'm at,
No,
it's
I
whatever. Yeah.
understand. There's certain things, yeah, like I love nachos, but it's going to take me like 3 days for my body to like the
Yep.
inflammation to reduce after having nachos.
Yep.
It's just, yeah, my stomach's
It
not
just
going to
is
be
the way
great.
it is,
It's
for
just
sure.
what it is. And you just understand that's, yeah, accountability is
100%.
a thing.
It is. Yep. That's probably 60% of my job is just accountability. But
Yeah.
luckily it's all in your pocket right there. You just click a button and now you're accountable.
No, that's cool. And I think it's really important too to be able to understand that a person can be held accountable without shaming them, without invalidating them for their
Yeah.
process.
Shame is a terrible, terrible tool. And
Yeah.
it can be used as a tool. And people use it as a tool far too often. And there's so many other ways to do that. Like what I've learned in this journey is it's like the goals that I had when I was sick for when I get well are not the same goals that I have when I'm well. Having the massive business, working 18 hours a day, like that was one of my goals originally, was to be able to work 18 hours a day because that's what brought me joy.
Wow.
Working 18 hours a day doesn't bring me joy no matter how much I want to, so it's adjusting those goals from what I thought they were when I was sick, because I always had all this stuff to make up,
Yeah.
to what they actually are in reality right now as someone who's in a better state, which is why my company, like for my clients are, the general goal is to just pursue happiness with underlying chronic conditions. Like that's it. Pursue happiness. That can be anything, but does it
Yeah.
really make you happy? Are you you want to lose 30 more pounds? Is that liquid diet really going to make you happy? Or have you done enough and now it's time to find sustainable ways to do the same thing that actually bring you joy every day?
Yeah.
And that's how we can get off this roller coaster, literally by that vision of pursue happiness, period.
Yeah.
And you can be happy overweight. You can be happy with an illness. You can be happy anywhere. But
Beautiful
if we're
message.
always fighting ourselves, thank you. Like that's the whole warrior thing. I was there. Like my journal on the cover of it for a lot of years said, "Let's go to war." Like that was my daily journal of how I was fighting and trying. And we can fight or we can love. Like
Yeah.
there's a battle or there's acceptance. There's lots of different variables there, but to sustain a sort of wellness for the long term, I feel that you can't keep fighting yourself. Nobody
Yeah.
wins in a war.
And I feel like that can dovetail into like societal concepts of masculinity and illness and how men sometimes have to step into that. Like, would you like to speak to that construct a little bit?
I don't think it's just men. I think in general, when we're ill, we're going to like a chronic illness warrior. Like we get into this mindset of being a warrior. But what are we fighting? Like literally, what are we fighting? Ourselves. That's what autoimmune disease is. Your body's fighting itself.
Yeah.
I understand going to war against a disease, but when that is within you, you can't win,
Yeah.
right? Those symptoms, those feelings are there to teach you. but you got to be open to learn from it.
To
When you're
listen.
fighting something, it's a lot harder to learn. When you know that you have this flare cycle and you're fighting it until you go down, only to have your rest be full of guilt because you can't do anything and you
Yeah.
can't get out of bed, and that just serves that illness cycle. Whereas if you make enough space to rest regularly, you never get to that level, and you show yourself grace, and you know what it's going to take to be able to rest, even though it's not comfortable and it's not the right time. Like, there's a lot of stuff to do. There's a way to fit that in so we don't get to that crash.
Yeah.
Like, my flare cycle was sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes 3 months, but I would always just push and push and push until I was so overstimulated I had to like sit in a dark room for a day.
Wow.
A lot of that was screens. It's a common thing with TBI, but I didn't know that until I went and researched it.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to lose focus on what's happening when we're always focusing on the next problem.
Yeah.
And preparing for the next problem.
Yeah.
But if we can take and shift that to opportunity, now we're open to learn. And it's in a single word. When a problem becomes an opportunity, there's other ways to learn. When we want to be a survivor, and we are a survivor, there's certain things you can learn. When you shift to thriving, there's a whole different bunch of stuff to learn.
Yeah.
But it serves better and it serves forward momentum.
Yeah. Thank goodness for
Again,
that.
my opinion, my experience.
No, I
like
mean, that's why
my
you're here
business
today, is to
yeah.
share all of that. Like, that's why you're here, to share it with the masses, and it'll hit with whoever it's meant to hit,
Cool.
And then people will be able to, like, we'll have your information in the description, and people will have the opportunity to reach out to you and ask questions, and hopefully get the coaching from you that they need if that's something that they find in their lives. And that'll be fantastic, because then you can help people like dive deeper into their experience and have a more functional and happier life, and and thrive.
That's it.
That's
That's it. I mean,
wonderful.
would you rather introduce yourself as I'm surviving or I'm thriving? Even just saying that word to other people, it lights them up.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's a beautiful thing to get to thrive, and because life is all about perspective.
Yep. It is. And you can have a wonderful perspective over life even with chronic pain and a chronic illness, or an illness that creates pain, or anything. Like, there's always space to thrive.
Yeah. No,
You just got to create it.
I totally agree. And I too have been a person that's dealt with chronic pain like my whole life. Like, when I was young, I had like ulcers when I was 15, and I had like IBS. And when I was young, I counted the days that I felt good instead of like the days that when people feel sick. Those are the days that they remember. And just to literally go through life like that. And that's part of the reason I usually always would drive everywhere by myself, because I'd never know when I'd get a stomach attack and I'd have to leave like that. And I didn't want to negatively impact anybody else that was having a good time and have them have to leave because I had to go. And, and people, they look at you, and especially when you're like extroverted and you have this big energy and everybody's, like, you're having fun, they don't think of you as like, oh, that person is struggling, because it's an invisible illness. Like, a chronic pain is like, it's this invisible condition. And because you look normal, that they just assume everything's fine. And and it can be really difficult, and you can feel really alone in that, and being vulnerable to even communicate to people that like you feel sick all the time, or like a really good part of the time, like, because there's lots of self-judgment and societal judgment that oftentimes goes with that, especially like you were saying before, when people are like, oh, it's just in your head. Like, I don't know how many times like my like people I knew was just like, it's just in your head, like, you're fine. They're like, you're making an excuse because you don't want to be here, or like all those different things that go with it. And it's a very interesting journey when you have to frame your life around like do I feel physically well enough to do X or Y or Z?
Mhm.
It's just different.
It is. And
Uh,
there's a lot of people out there that go through it every day and don't talk about it and don't
yeah.
have support because they've been told it's all in their head for so long. And
Mhm.
I believed it was.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, it's all in my head. Great. Now what?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
would get,
And how does
I
that
would,
serve me?
right. So, go to the therapy, go to the counseling, get the medications. I've been the medical route a few times, and I've learned from that. But what I also learned was that any medication I take screws my stomach up worse than any effects that I could have gotten from it, right?
Yeah.
Because with that disease that I had, the lining of my bladder was destroyed. So anything going into my bladder, there was, it was all inflamed.
Yeah.
So it would just have that horrible effect and stomach ache and pain.
Yeah.
But what I learned was like that level of pain dictates stress and blood pressure and hormones and those sorts of things. It's not taken into account when you go to the doctor. For instance, I had a doctor try to put me on high blood pressure medication because my blood pressure was really high, but it was because I went in with a massive amount of pain in my foot.
Random.
Pain from foot gone, blood pressure lower. But
Yeah.
he was trying to put me on a massive dose of blood pressure meds because it was so high,
Yeah.
you know? So it's
Uh,
just one of those things to be considered when going through different processes.
yeah, it just reminded me of something that I wanted to have you touch on real quick before we wrap up, um,
Yep.
which is pelvic floor dysfunction, because a lot of people don't talk about it. And especially in regards to men. And it's so incredibly helpful for people to understand how the musculature works in there, why like physical therapy can be really helpful for different conditions, for pelvic floor. I mean, I personally had pelvic floor physical therapy done in regards to recovering from my low back surgeries. And it was incredibly like life-changing for me in regards to um, helping just like with nerve pain in my leg, which is random, and pain in my low back. And like having had like pain with sex for a very long time. And I mean, like that's a very personal, like thing to admit to a public forum, but I mean this is the reality of bodies, like there's
Yep.
muscles in there when we experience trauma, male or female, that there can be residual pain that occurs in that area that can be released through like manual work and physical therapy, because you have muscles in there, you have fascia, you have nerves, like you have the fascia that wraps around arteries, like that can then create different dysfunctional patternings in the body, and it all like
Mm-hmm.
range of symptoms that occur. It's like it's really fascinating. So I would love to hear like from a man's perspective, like what that was for you, just so other men can know about it, is something that could potentially help them.
So I don't want to go too deep into that because it's kind of, not that it's sensitive, but it's
It's totally fine, whatever you feel comfortable with.
what's the word for it? It makes other people kind of uncomfortable. So it can lead to, like in men, erectile dysfunction or not able to urinate properly, or even just stand up. You get this massive amount of pain in your lower back because all of the muscles are clenched and tight. So we end up standing like this, and then we try to stand up. Meanwhile, we get tight in our hips. And then, so for me, and that separation of the pons nuclei, the sphincters inside, like the sphincter inside my bladder was held closed for years and years. And that's how the kidney stone got into my bladder. And then a car accident lodged it into the lining because it couldn't release. So once a kidney stone gets in the bladder, it should be able to exit because it's, the exit is a lot bigger than the entrance. But
Yeah.
for me, the muscle spasms from the car crash weren't allowing that. So I had a vibration in my body for years that I didn't know what that was. I just thought it was anxiety, but it was literally my
Interesting.
body was vibrating and I couldn't identify it. It wasn't until
Huh.
I met that doctor in Spain that explained pons nuclei and then how the sphincters work and then how to correct it. And then all of a sudden one day I was just like, there's no pain. There's no, and this, you know, it was all mental stuff that I had to figure out, right?
Yeah.
It was like zeroing in on this thing and then relaxing a certain way and doing certain exercises and doing different therapies and talk therapies, and basically learning how to connect with that again, because I was so disconnected.
Right.
Sure. So in men, there's a huge issue with that. You know, I was a snowboarder for years. I loved snowboarding. It was my number one sport. But every time I would fall, I would just get horrible pain because of the dysfunction that I already had. And then it would reactivate any of those spasms that I was working on, and it would go over, right?
Yeah.
So snowboarding is something that I don't do anymore because I can't fall. The other thing with that is I hit my head really hard, even with the helmet on, and lost 3 days because of another concussion, because I'm so susceptible to them. So that's one of those things with illness and getting into wellness, is you kind of got to accept what your limitations are and work within those.
Yeah.
So like, I know now that if I hit my head again really hard, I can just go lights out. So it's not worth snowboarding. It's not worth, you know, but it is worth motorcycle riding, because that makes me happy. Yeah. So, you know, but it's on a more careful level. It's on, and that's worth it. But it's not worth it to go 100 miles an hour anymore. It's just, you know, go to Montana and go without a helmet. Right. That's just kind of managing expectations. But back to the pelvic floor stuff, it's when if guys have an issue and they get it figured out, let's just say things on the personal level become a lot more fun and rewarding. Like, intimacy becomes a whole different ballgame when you have control over those functions. Yeah. We'll leave it at that, and I'd be happy to talk about it with anybody, but on a public forum, probably not the best to get into it.
I completely understand. I open up on my side just because, you know, I know that there are a lot of people that don't talk about that, with the pain that can sometimes come with sex when, because it's a really vulnerable thing to talk about. And, yeah, even in like nurturing relationships and how you manage that and how it affects that whole dynamic. And it really comes down to having healthy communication and boundaries and bodily awareness, right? And but just so many people I found don't even know that it's available as a modality of healing. Like the woman that works on me has a PhD in physical therapy, and she focuses on visceral manipulation, which, you know, you can study through the Upledger Institute, for the body in general. It's been one of the best healing modalities for my body out of all the different physical therapy I've had, and for my low back and the 2 surgeries I've had, and my own head injury, like all of the things. Like, it's been the biggest thing for me. And like you said, like different people's bodies heal, you know, the different things like healing to help them. But that has just been such an incredible like game changer for me, in having her work on like arteries and nerves and
and that's the thing, like in this journey, you're going to find all kinds of different people that can help in different ways. And it's, you know, pulling from them, but it's also like, don't be afraid to go back later on if things aren't working, you know, if things aren't sticking, if things aren't staying. And, you know, the person that helps you with that isn't going to shame you because you have to go back to them. Like, that's part of our job. It's what we do. It's continuing.
Yeah.
I find a lot of people don't, they're like, right. But I find a lot of people get treatment, feel a whole lot better. And then when things start to backslide a little bit, they don't reach out because somehow it's their fault they didn't keep up. And that's not the case.
We didn't do our physical therapy.
Yeah.
Mad at us.
Right. So, you know, that's part of the process, is learning what's working and what's not, and then to reach out and get the help that you need when you need it again, and sometimes again, and sometimes again. You know, I have clients that come back after years because they're just in a spot, and like, I should have reached out 18 months ago, but I didn't. I'm like, why not? Well, I thought I could figure it out, and I didn't want to tell you that I wasn't doing what you told me to, and you know, all this. And I'm like, yeah, that's why you hired me in the first place, and that's why we're going to get on this again. And, you know, and then within 5 minutes of conversation, it's
everything's
right
fine.
back on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
don't be
It's been
afraid to
a
reach
10-year
back
journey
out
for
of,
me
yeah.
for my low back surgery stuff. It's been like literally 10 years of just like working through all of the different things, you know, and just having to have grace and slowly losing weight and building muscle and seeing different providers. And so I'm just like, don't give up. Don't give up hope, ladies and gentlemen. I
No.
mean, like, I was not, they told me they didn't know if I was ever going to be able to stand up straight or walk again. And people would meet me today and you'd have no idea that it's something that I've struggled with and that, you know, on some level I still continue to work with, but thrive, you know, and that's what like that mindset is like, even though if you have pain or illness, that it's always a choice. It's always a choice. And so, Ray, you've been great today. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everything. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we wrap up for this wonderful morning session?
No, I'm good. If anybody has any questions or guys about pelvic floor stuff, feel free to reach out. I'm sure you'll give some contact info on there.
I will.
Yeah.
Great resource.
I'm an open book in private, but sometimes my story gets a little bit out of control for some people on a public forum. Yeah. Happy to answer any questions and support in any way that I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all that you offer to the community, Ray. I really appreciate you.
You too.
You're very welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, until next time.
Bye.